Welcome to Alpha Centurion. I'll be your guide. Today we are going to be looking at just a brief snippet of the Jimmy Akin versus Bart Ehrman debate. But I want to bring up one place where I really felt Jimmy faltered. And it's going to begin a little bit before we get to his faltering, where Jimmy's being a little bit arrogant and he's simply saying, well, that answer is on my blog. And then Bart Ehrman says, well, I'm going to Catholic scholars. I'm looking at Raymond Brown. And Jimmy Akin kind of snidely hints that he might be a liberal Catholic or somehow discount Raymond Brown. And Bart Ehrman is defending Raymond Brown and defending Catholic scholarsism. He's defending the Catholic scholarly view and saying that Catholic academics and Catholic scholaryism, is that a word, is really good here, and he doesn't understand why Jimmy's not just taking a Catholic priest who happens to be an academic's opinion. So we're going to start off there, and we're going to get into I believe it's Luke and Matthew, a Luke versus Matthew problem. It seems like Jimmy's just wrong. And I've read Jimmy's articles on this before. I read it like maybe 2-3 years ago, I think. I know I've read it before. I know that. I think it's an older article. Because I had a question when I was reading through the Bible the second time or the third time. And I was like, hey, this doesn't seem to sync up. So I looked up Jimmy Akin. I just looked up the contradiction, and Jimmy Akin's page popped up as a link. And I was like, yeah, I love Jimmy Akin. I'm going to go to this one. He had a really good explanation. Bart Ehrman seems to demolish that explanation in this little snippet, okay? I'm not going to be showing any video because I don't want to get copyright claimed. I'm just going to be playing the audio.
And if you really want to read read Raymond Brown's book, The Birth of the Messiah, where he discusses these things at great length. And he's I don't know if you all would everybody know Ray Brown?
Everybody does.
He's a Catholic priest who taught who was a biblical scholar. He's one of these great Catholic biblical scholars after Vatican II, and people like him and John Meyer and Joseph Fitzmyer. These are all great Catholic scholars who would just agree that these genealogies don't work. So anyway, okay. Do you think that in Luke's gospel, Jesus tells the disciples after the resurrection, don't leave Jerusalem. They're still there 40 days later. Do you think that's right, that they did not leave Jerusalem?
I think this is another selection issue. We have Matthew indicating that they did go to Galilee, and we have Luke only mentioning that they stayed in Jerusalem. But as John reveals to us, both of those are true. In John chapter 20, it's the day of the resurrection. Jesus appeared, and a week later, Jesus appears to the disciples in Jerusalem. Then they go to Galilee. And in John 21, we read about what happened in Galilee.
That's right.
So by the time Pentecost rolls around, they've come back to Jerusalem for the travel feast, and Jesus tells them at that point, don't leave until afterwards.
Okay, but in Luke's gospel, he tells them that on the day of the resurrection. It's quite explicit that he rises from the dead. That day he meets the two disciples on the road to Emmaus. That day he appears to the disciples. He immediately tells them that day, don't leave Jerusalem, and they're still there 40 days later. Is that not right?
It is not right.
It is right.
No, because Luke doesn't say...
Oh, he does. He does.
I want you to hear that part again, because Jimmy really falters here. I understand that Jimmy has a very nuanced and dynamic approach, and a lot of the apologists coming out of the Catholic Answer School for Apologetics are very dynamic and very nuanced in their answers. But in this debate format, that does not work. And Bart rolls over him right here. It makes Jimmy's whole 1 hour argument up to now, it nullifies it. It just makes it sound like Jimmy had no idea what he was talking about. I've seen it happen with Jimmy before on some of his other debates, where he has a very high grasp of the high concept, but on the low base, simple reading, Jimmy doesn't really seem to grasp what the presenter or the interlocutor is saying. So let's hear that again.
That he rises from the dead. That day he meets the two disciples on the road to Emmaus. That day he appears to the disciples. He immediately tells them, that day, don't leave Jerusalem, and they're still there 40 days later. Is that not right?
It is not right.
It is right.
No, because Luke doesn't say
Oh, he does. He does. Every point is, and that day, at that same time, at that hour, read Luke 24, and you'll see exactly what he says.
My memory of the text is different.
I looked at it an hour before we came to make sure. Am I right about this? Yep, it is. So he tells them that day don't leave Jerusalem.
Okay.
And so Matthew says they immediately went to Galilee. And so
I think there's more flexibility in there, and actually at jimmyakin.com/Bart, there's a whole thing about how the resurrection accounts fit together. But at most, you would have Luke.
I think that was a really poor form of Jimmy Akin to do. To use this opportunity to what sounds like self-advertise. Just, it didn't look good. It made him look a little slimy, and honestly, it made us look a little dishonest. Us, meaning Catholics. It didn't work here in this instance. I'm going to play a little bit more, and then I'm going to see if I can read, not the whole thing, but just kind of read what Bart Ehrman is talking about.
Being wrong about a minor detail. What day did he give them this?
a minor detail about the resurrection appearances. Did Jesus appear? If he did, when and where? Mark says that the women didn't even tell anybody. Matthew says he appeared in Galilee. Luke says he appeared only in Jerusalem. Are these all correct? If they're not all correct, is any of them correct? That's the issue. It's not a minor issue. It's not.
Now, I wanna note something here. Some of the Catholics and Christians defending Jimmy on this are saying, well, Bart's saying that the apparition to the 500 was, or the, whatever you want to call it, you don't have to call it an apparition, the 500 witnessing Jesus was a hallucination. Okay? That's not what Bart Ehrman is saying in this section. He's not, even if that's what he believes elsewhere, that's not what he's saying here. He's saying we have three different accounts that say three different things. They can't all be true. And if at least two of them can be falsified, why not all three accounts be falsified? That's what Bart Ehrman's argument is. And Jimmy's answer is, go check out my website where I preloaded some stuff I wrote years ago that counters you. That's a terrible answer to a very strong objection and a very good question. Let's check out what Luke 24 actually says. But at daybreak on the first day of the week, they took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord. Okay, then let's go down. So Peter got up, ran to the tomb, bent down, and saw the burial clothes alone. When he went home, he was amazed at what had happened. So it sounds like some time has passed, right? But it says, now that very day, two of them were going to a village 7 miles from Jerusalem called Emmaus. I don't know if that's pronounced right. Emmaus. Okay. Now that very day. So even though in the reading, you could somehow see some time passing, in the very next sentence after that reading, you get in that very day. Then it goes on. So they have a conversation. They look downcast. They keep talking. Now, even though it had been 3 days since the crucifixion, or since the burial, here's the thing. Has time passed in this portion of the story with them walking to Emmaus, with them meeting the Lord on the way? It then says, so they set out at once and returned to Jerusalem, and they found gathered there the 11 and those who were with them. They set out at once. When? On that very day. On what day? The day that they took spices to the tomb, on the first day of the week, 3 days after the burial. Okay. So then he says, I am sending the promise of my Father upon you, but stay in the city until you are clothed with the power from on high. And that's what they're saying, that they stayed for then another 40 days, or however long. So that's Bart Ehrman's argument. Okay, and again, I've read Jimmy Akin give an answer to this before, so it is very disappointing that he faltered in this part of the debate. And I think he's also faltered on this before, or some other Catholic apologist has. Maybe it was Tim Staples, because I know that I've talked about this in a video, an old video, a long time ago. And the answer that they're giving, and I think his answer was based on Jimmy Akin's answer. So let's look at it again. Let's check out after the resurrection. So on the first day of the week, at the first sign of dawn, they went to the tomb with spices they had prepared. When the women returned to the tomb, they told all this to the 11. Peter then went running to the tomb and was amazed at what had happened. Then on that very same day, 2 of them were on their way to the village called Emmaus. They then speak to Jesus. They then go off to a village. They go back. They do the breaking of bread. And then it says, they were still talking about this when he himself stood among them and said. So he's going to come among them. Now, they set out that instant and returned to Jerusalem. So I think I looked it up on Google that day, and I think it was something like 7 miles. So it's a 1 hour walk. So you're talking about a 1 hour walk in either direction. So maybe it was the beginning of the day and now it's evening, but it's still all within a 1 day time frame, by the way Luke tells the story. And then he says to them, and now I am sending down to you what the Father has promised. Stay in the city then until you are clothed. Stay in the city then until you are clothed with the power from on high. That's from 2 different translations. From the CTS, which kind of no longer is a thing, but it's one of my favorite Catholic translations, and from the New American Bible. I could go on to the ESV if you wanted to, but that would just eat up too much time. Bart's interpretation of Luke, from a simple reading, is correct. Now, I believe that Luke is telling the truth to the best of his ability. I don't think this discounts or discredits the Bible, but the way Jimmy answered does not show that. The way Jimmy answered was dismissive, arrogant, and it made him seem unprepared, even though he was literally prepared by having the article that he wrote against this argument set up. He should have given an explanation. And I do think this made us look bad. And I do think if Jimmy did lose this debate, not because he was wrong, but because his debate style wasn't a winning one, this is an example of why he could be thought of as losing this debate.